Travelers Rest State Park. And so welcome everybody to Travelers Rest and to Winter Storytelling. So I'm going to give a quick introduction before we get going. So 2026 is a big year for birthdays. Travelers Rest State Park and Travelers Rest Connection celebrate our 25th anniversary this year, as we also commemorate the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States of America. But history did not begin in 1776. Travelers Rest acknowledges that we are gathered today on the homeland of the Salish Kootenai people at a place they named Timsumqui. Their example as the original stewards of this land guides our work today. We are committed to respectfully sharing the history and contemporary culture of the Indigenous people who lived and traveled through the ancient crossroads on this land. We learn from many Indigenous artists, elders, and organizations. We invite you to learn from and support them as well. Thank you to everyone who makes these programs possible, including the members of Travelers Rest Connection, MCAT, Missoula's community media resource, who provided a media assistance grant to record winter storytelling programs, and other sponsors include Montana Public Radio, the Montana 250 Commission, and Parkside Credit Union. For folks joining us on Zoom, it is helpful if you keep yourself muted and your video off during the presentation. If you have questions for our speaker, please type them in the chat box on Zoom. We will monitor the chat for questions and for any technical difficulties you might have. Now please help me welcome today's speaker. Tim Ryan is a prominent member of the Confederate Salish and Kootenai tribes, serving as the Culture and Language Studies Department Head and Indigenous STEM instructor at Salish Kootenai College, known for blending traditional ecological knowledge, archaeology, and science to connect youth and the community to their ancestral lands, particularly through programs like the Mission Mountains Youth Crew. He's an expert in ethnobotany, traditional lifeways, and field archaeology, bridging Indigenous wisdom with modern science for cultural preservation and education. Please welcome Tim Ryan and Jan.
It's been a long time since I've been here, so thank you. I'm honored to be invited back and to also bring one of my students with me too. So it's a good benefit to me because she's a language expert, basically, getting there, and I appreciate her being here to help kind of add to my knowledge and my presentations. I think I'm going to have her talk a little bit more so she can introduce herself.
Epesia has squext, jangar piclu squest, til hoit lil kusa uchiskelio, u ep esel susihwils, u Micah u Maria, u now Tim es suhuimeam, SKC, or Salish Kootenai College. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jan Gardapi. I am from Pablo, Montana. I have two children, Micah and Maria. And Tim here he will always be my teacher. But I did graduate this past June with my Bachelor's of Science in the Salish Kootenai Culture and Language Studies under Tim. And today I'm here to support my teacher, of course, my mentor, and educate some of you guys. So I'm excited to talk with you guys, but I will let Tim talk. I'll have my chance here in a little bit.
Also to thank the people online there. I hear my nephew Casey's out there. He's also a very prominent speaker and presenter representing the tribe. He's going to be in the movie Waterkeepers that will be coming out in the Big Sky Film Fest, I believe, or so. So you have to catch him. I think don't remember the date that he's going to be playing, but yeah. Okay, I believe my mic is picking up on the one I'm wearing. Okay, great, thank you. I just want to kind of explain a little bit that part of my class, we're structured on this Salish seasonal round. I teach a Bachelor's of Science degree in Salish culture and language, which is, I don't think any other tribal college or university has done that, actually bringing the culture and language into an academic setting. And so that was directed by our Séliš and Kootenai culture committees, which I have to give a shout out to that committee for contributing such great, wonderful cultural information that I'm passing on to you guys. The elders that were part of the culture committee, many of them are passed away now. I'm 66 now, so I've had a great opportunity to work with those other elders that have passed away, doing extensive interviews, especially when we're doing the archaeological work. Tribal Historic Preservation Office that I worked for about 10 years. Had a great opportunity of working with our elders. We would usually, if we found an archaeological site or a traditional use area, we'd bring our elders out there and we'd ask them, why do you think this site is here? Why do you think this old fire hearth and rock cairns and trails and stuff like that too? And we would get their input. And so that input was what builds this season around here. What did our ancestors do during the different seasons for a full cycle of livelihood? And so with that, that knowledge plus my archaeological knowledge, and we do have some archaeologists there in the Milo is there, McLeod, and then also Weber Greiser's there, and two archaeologists that are mentors to me, and I appreciate their work, and part of the Montana Archaeological Society, which I'm a part of also. And I'm hoping to get some of my students there too, because the college has a tribal historic preservation degree program. You can get an associate's and a bachelor's degree in tribal historic preservation work, which is about managing cultural resources, archaeological sites, and things like that. So, so we're getting our students interested in archaeology too. Okay, we are in the winter months, and we are in February right now, which is called the coldest month. What? Doesn't seem like it, right? I mean, it's really strange. We have elders who pray for snow because they realize the value of what snow does, and of those weather, of the weather patterns and such. And March is the geese are coming back in March, is the Séliš designation for March, and I'm already seeing a lot of activity of geese too. You may have been seeing it here on the Bitter River and through the valley there, but they're very active. So we're skipping a month, or we're moving ahead a little bit too fast. Even Bitterroot. On the Flathead River, I took my students there last Friday in Buffalo Bridge area, and there was a few Bitterroots coming up in February. Unheard of, unprecedented that happens. Although I do know it can happen even in the fall, because there was a landowner in the Bitterroot Valley here that my sister and I got involved with some Bitterroot down there, and they called up one time and they said in November, the day warmed up just right and the Bitterroot started coming up in November. It's like, wow. So that plant it reacts to, of course, longer days, sunny days, warms up the ground, and it starts to come up. But it's an amazing plant because it comes up, and when it gets cold, it goes back down on the ground. And some of you probably know that because you probably live here in the valley and you've witnessed that. I mean, that's extraordinary. It really is that a plant can do that. But we hope it doesn't have to do that so many times that the energy is spent and the plant won't come up for our Bitterroot dig in the spring, because that's very, very important. I have brought some items, some material cultural items that I also produce. I was just deemed or inducted into the Montana Circle of Master Artists for 2025 for the work that I do. Excuse me. The teachings and the creation, the making of our material cultural items is part of my profession, that part of me. Okay, and so I have some representatives of that. And since I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about Bitterroot or speculum, I thought I'd bring a Bitterroot digger. And not that we have to talk about it too much, but it is identified with the female responsibilities, and maybe Jan will speak to that later on when she's telling her stories. So you're welcome to look at some of these things, and we'll probably talk a little bit about fishing methods and stuff, and so I'll bring out the fish trap too and talk about that. All right, so yeah, place names are wonderful. I had the great opportunity to travel with the elders on ethnogeographic place name projects. And those place names, we took field trips to the Yellowstone, the Musselshell, the Missouri, the Clark Fork River drainage, the Bitterroot. And within those field trips, we took elders and we went to these place names, talked about them, recorded them. Sorry about that. Are you still picking me up? Yeah. Okay, here. I pulled this out. And that place names, geographical place names project is I like saying some of my National Geographic moments, and I have lived them quite a bit, working in the capacity that I am working at. And so one I wanted to point out was the Musselshell. The place name for that is Eyes Wide Open Wood. And we weren't too sure what that meant. And so on the field trip, we had Johnny R. Lee, and we stopped at a river access site. And there's this willow bushes there. And Johnny looks up and he's looking at it. He's like, oh, wow. And he cuts off a stave of a little crutch type of thing, he had, and he started carving on it. And in the bus, he said, that's why this river's called Eyes Wide Open Wood, because it was a diamond willow. And if you're familiar with diamond willow, it has those eyes that come open, and they're making, canes with it and stuff like that too. So that was really cool. That's really nice to see how those place names come alive after they're defined and discovered that way. So anyway, so place names are very important to us for the tribe, and because, as the elders say, if we have a place name, then we were there. That was part of our homelands and things like that, part of our seasonal round and our annual movements upon the landscape there. So, okay, Jan, could you advance that for me, please? Okay, so I constructed this graphic. It has a trail network. I worked with Mike Derglow Sr., who has now passed away. He was a cartographer and a surveyor, and he was on the last crew for surveying the reservation boundary and correcting some of the surveying errors that was part of this reservation here. And so him and I worked on this trail network map here, and basically these are the highways. These trails are the highways. This is not all the trails. But I also wanted to kind of point out the main protein sources. Of course, I'm not including the elk and the deer and then other protein sources, but what I wanted to highlight is those kind of cash crop protein sources, the bison and the salmon on basically, of course, we had at one time bison all through the Rocky Mountain area, into the plateau area of Washington and Idaho, but as times changed, the bison were more regulated to the plains area, and then we started basically, that's where the term roads to the buffalo came about, because we were traveling from the interior of the Rocky Mountain area out to the bison, which long ago we had tribes out on the Rocky Mountain front in the first place. And then through a lot of the incursion of plains tribes coming into eastern and central Montana, pushed our tribes back into basically the Rocky Mountain area. So then our roads to the buffalo were coming through the mountains there and going into the plains, central and eastern Montana to hunt the bison. And then we have our Nez Perce cousins over here interacting and trading bison and salmon products. And Lolo Pass was one of those areas where Séliš and the Nez Perce came together, and we traded salmon and bison products and such. So pretty cool, that little trading and the interaction with different tribes within our territory there. Thinking I got a clicker, but I don't. Okay, so let's get into fishing a little bit more, since this is a great opportunity, since we have Norman McLean's work in here, and I've been interacting with John McLean. Is John here by chance? I didn't think he didn't say he was going to be here, so, but I thought I'd check. But yeah, so John and I have been talking about collaborating on some projects and stuff like that too. And with the Montana Conservation Elders, I'm a part of their program too. And so we'll be working on some projects together. So the seasonal round, fishing. This seasonal round graphic is basically a calendar and a map to me. There's a time and place for all those activities to happen. And it basically kind of maps out the resources and activities that were vital to our tribes. Seasonal round, one complete seasonal round. And if we talk about the fisheries in this seasonal round, we have in the spring, we have the cutthroat that spawns in the spring, and there is cultural bio indicators to that. Could you advance that to a few slides where it shows the two? Yeah, there we go. Perfect, thank you, Jan. So that seasonal round has built into it cultural bio indicators. So we have, I'm just going to move this seems a little in my way from. In the environmental sciences, you have botanists and wildlife biologists, hydrologists that look at nature around us, and there are biological indicators of what's happening out there, right? To measure what's happening with our environment. But what about humans? With humans, we have the cultural bioindicators. And in the spring, what is April is the buttercup month? That is a cultural bioindicator to our tribes that spring is really coming on now. Now we can start planning for our activities in the spring, and that we also know that the cutthroat are getting ready to spawn, or they're spawning about that time. So you better get all your fishing gear ready and start watching the streams, the small feeder streams into the bigger bodies of water, because the cutthroat are going to spawn in those farther reaches with clean water, smaller streams and stuff like that too. So that's pretty cool. We can look at nature and it'll give us an indication of what's happening somewhere else or what's happening on the land that we should be taking note of. Because we don't want to miss these spawning episodes, because there's such a great opportunity to get a lot of protein. And then we have in the fall, we have the bull trout. That cultural bioindicator is the western larch. When that starts to turn yellow, then that's an indication that the bull trout are either spawning or they're beginning to spawn, and we better get our gear ready for that episode. But that's getting ready for the spawn. There is constantly fishing. There's one reason why, part of the reasons why we run our water rights is because we exhibited how we depended on fish. When we had camps set up, fish traps were set into the streams pretty automatically. When the men went out to hunt, the old men and the young boys stayed in camp, they were fishing. They were trapping around the camp too, trapping fur animals and things. But fishing was done no matter where you went, they were always fishing. And as Mitch Small Salmon says, at Kalispea Elder, we were wealthy from the water. And they're referring to the fish, the mussels, things like that. We did mussels on Finley Creek. There's some mussels on Flathead River too. I found a mussel shell that was probably about that big. And that's huge. That's almost like coastals. that's almost like from the beaches of Washington or something like that too. But they get that big. And when they're that big, they are very old too. They're probably decades old or so. So so fishing was helped to establish that. One more, yeah. Okay, Jan, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, so we just had a class. Can you guys all hear me? Yeah. Okay. So again, fish, you say swewith, 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 like on the side of your mouth. Swewith. So, and in the sign language, it's just making just like it shows. Just you're making that how the fish swim. So that's sign language. We just did a sign language with Johnny Arlie, and it's amazing. So we're trying to really incorporate, I'm trying to incorporate more sign language with our language because it goes hand in hand. But yeah, so fish, swewith. You could just, even if you don't know the name of the fish, as long as you're talking about fish, swewith. Okay? And it's just the swimming of the fish.
Okay, next slide. Thank you, Jen.
Una.
Oh,
Oh, we didn't get that one.
yep. So to continue with the place names, there's down in the Big Hole River, there's a little pull-off, a day use area that's called Fish Trap. And there's Louis Adams down there. We're down in this area, and we take elders to these areas that we're doing some archaeological work, and of course exploring place names. So Louis and I are talking there in this day use area. We're saying, well, how come this place is called Fish Trap? And so we kind of deducted that the early settlers there probably observed our Salish people using a fish trap on the Big Hole River. And then Louis and I were looking at the river right at that spot, and it's wider and it's shallower. He said, you know, this would probably be a really good place to put a fish trap. Probably works out really well. So that's kind of interesting. So that kind of proves that, you know, the fish trap was being used widely within our homelands. And then if you go up north to Dayton Creek, the Kootenai's name for Dayton Creek refers to the use of a fish trap there too. So I think, you know, history doesn't tell us exactly that, yes, we've been using the fish trap for hundreds of, you know, thousands of years, but through my work and such, I deduct that the fish trap was used quite regularly in most every camps. The fish trap was carried with them or created on the spot, made, and then used that way. Let me see, just a little quote from Louis Adams there, is after the winter, all our different families would just spread out and go everywhere to gather all their foods and have whatever they are hunt for whatever they are hunting for. And Louis Adams was a Bitterroot Salish. And of course, we know that when we refer to Bitterroot Salish, we're not referring that that's where all of our people come from, the Bitterroot Valley. It was just a fraction of our homelands, and that's kind of where we were kind of pushed in those areas from a lot of the Plains tribes coming into the eastern western Montana and moving into the Rocky Mountain area. Okay. And so heritage education is a big thing that, you know, part of our responsibilities at the college is to bring out this information and interact with the schools. Two Eagle River School, we're gathering all the materials to make a fish trap there. And then we have a river honoring event. If some of you might know of that event on the reservation, we have two big circles of teepees. I think there's 8 to 9 teepees per circle. And tribal departments and other people who are involved with water, with the river, they're there, set up stations with the teepees, and then school kids, we try to zero in on the demographic of 5th and 6th graders, the most impressionable age at that time, and to teach them about the values about the river and about what the tribe is doing in managing those riverine sources and the aquatic and the animals that are around and associated with that, and the riparian areas where a lot of our foods and other construction materials are, and how we manage for those. And so then there's Jan up there too, talking about the petsa, or the traditional digging stick there. And then I'm down there talking about the fish trap and such. And that's always a good time, always a fun time, teaching the kids about the river and the value of the river and the cultural use of the river environment. Okay. So getting into a little bit of the fishing methods and tools. I did bring a fishing spear here too, but maybe I'll go into the fish trap a little bit more. Working with my elders has been a wonderful time. Another National Geographic moment, basically working with the elders. And so doing interviews with them, one I talked to Eneas Vandenberg of the Vandenberg family. And I said, Eneas, did we make fish traps? He goes, oh yeah, we made fish traps, sure. And I said, well, what did we make them out of? And he says, we made them out of chicken wire. And he's like, yeah. And I go, oh, really? Chicken wire? And so I said, did we make them out of willow too? He goes, yeah, we made them out of willow. And so I thought about that. I thought, okay, well, what they had at hand, it was easy for them to construct. But when he described how they made it out of the chicken wire, it was the same design. It had this cone in there. It had certain ribs to support the chicken wire and stuff like that too. And but he put it together with wire. I had to put it together with rope and string that I made myself out of a plant named dogbane or Indian hemp. It grows along the Bitter River, the Flathead River, Clark Fork, Missouri. I mean, it's one of our native plants, but it is suffering a little bit from herbicides and stuff like that too. But it's one of the most valuable plants that we do have. And one of the first skills I teach some of our students is how to make rope and string from this plant. And so this is only two plants are used in this fish trap, and that's sandbar willow and the dogbane cordage, and they grow pretty close to each other too, so you can gather them in about the same place. So first time I made this, I worked on the string for probably about 3 weeks or so, spending a couple hours here and there in the evenings, and creating the string and the rope that I needed. So after I got it all done, then I said, okay, I'm going down to the river. I'm going to get all my willow. Now I'm going to make this fish trap. So I cut that willow down, brought it back into my shop. I formed the hoops, tied them into hoops and stuff, and then I started into bringing the ribs on there. And after probably about 4 or 5 days, I had the willow fish trap done. And I was looking at it, oh wow, this is so cool. I've never done this before, and it's like, how did I do this in a way? And so then there's kind of that surprise when I do create something and make something, and it turns out, and I'm going, wow, I've impressed myself. And I have to kind of question myself, how did that happen? And so we have a belief too that we have our spirit ancestors around us, and so then they're helping us and guiding us. But they didn't guide me to a certain point. After 3 months, it started to fall apart. It started just like, what's going on? All my ties and bindings coming loose. What did I do wrong? And I actually did. I picked up the trap and I said, Escoyo, is that right? Escoyo. What did I do wrong? What happened here? How come you're falling apart on me? Because I was taking it into schools. It was working really well for me. So then I started to kind of look at it and go, wow, it feels lighter. My observations as basis of science, and then I started seeing that the bark was a little more wrinkly. And I go, oh, okay, I get it. All the water dehydrated out of the willow, and the willow shrunk, and all my ties and binding came loose. Oh, man, okay. So I started thinking about that. How would my ancestors approach that situation? How would they consider what just happened there? And I thought, okay, you know what? The willow was kind of talking to me. It was essentially telling me that you cannot put me together with green willow, fresh from the river. It's full of water, right? And so I thought, oh, okay. It took about 3 months then for this thing to fall apart. Then that means I should probably let this stuff dry for 3 months and then come back and put it together. And so then I thought, okay, how would my ancestors think about that? They would think, wow, willow is talking to me. Willow is telling me what it needs, how I need to treat the willow in order for this thing to be stable and to last. Where that would be the indigenous worldview, right? What would be the Western worldview? Might be more like, oh, I figured it out. It was just me. Yeah, I figured it out. It wasn't, willow didn't have anything to do with it, right? So this is what I'm trying to teach the students, is to think more indigenous and how you would think about it. So that's how the relationship between these plants and animals, that's how you grow that relationship between them, is that consideration. Just like art, the art on the walls, your medium controls you as you control the medium. So there's an interplay between you and the medium. The medium is this willow, which to an indigenous worldview, it's alive, it's a human being, it's got family, it's got a consciousness. So you can start seeing the relationship building between plants, animals, minerals, and humans that are used through that process. So I thought, wow, cool, I'm gonna use this in my class. My mistakes are learning episodes for my students, so that's pretty cool. All right, so any questions? You guys stop me anytime. Any?
Jim,
Yes?
did you also use red osier dogwood on those?
No, this is actually sandbar willow. Yep, red osier dogwood is a good willow, or not. It's actually not a willow. It's a dogwood, but it's one of the most flexible willows that I've worked with before. I'll sometimes use them for my hoops here, but the sandbar willow, they get these long runners, very straight runners that I can use. And I've got to also just take this farther, the relationship to a plant. Let's talk about relationship to a animal through this fish trap. And that's squalau. Squalau is beaver. And when I come into an area, beaver helps me make my fish traps. Anybody know how beaver helps me make my fish traps? Hey, yeah, you, young man.
Like chew on the wood and make it, like cut this, like long.
Yeah, these long runners here, these long ribs here. Yeah, they cut it down. But you know what? They take that with them. They take the willow and they use it for food, or they build their lodge, right? But you're getting really close. You're really close.
They can dry out.
Then what?
They can dry out.
And then they can dry out. Okay, yep, that's possible. I could go up where he's stashing them and I could grab his because, yeah, I could do that, sure. But you're really close. Thank you for that. I appreciate you raising your hand. Yes, sir.
Is that when beavers harvest a certain section of willow, it produces straight runners that go straight up?
That's exactly right. Yep. It encourages that new growth for these long runners to come up then without a lot of branching. And so then I can come into a whole shrub that the beaver will come through and mow down, but then he's encouraging that new growth to come up with these really nice, big, long runners. And so then I'll have a patch, like I'll have 8 or 9 of these beautiful long runners like that I could then come back. And so after about 2 or 3 years after a beaver goes through there, then the willow's about up there. And so I go, lam lam squalau, helping me with my scoyo. So yeah, so that's a wonderful story too. So then you can see the relationship building between animals and such. Yes, sir.
Yeah, could you talk about like how they're placed in the stream and where in particular and what
yeah.
turned them down?
You could go to the next slide. I think I got one set up. Go again. I think.
You can't, oh, it's the next one.
Oh, it's taking a little while for it to advance. Yeah, there we go.
Go back.
Yeah, so here's a willow fence line set up to direct the fish in there so they don't go around the trap.
Wait, it's like doing something that's acting weird.
Oh yeah,
Sorry, let me go back, guys, I'm sorry.
no problem. Yeah, I was having a little problem with it too.
Yeah, it's got a mind of its own right now.
It does. Yeah, what?
One
Ooh.
more, right there.
Okay.
Wait, it's gonna keep going. Come on. All right. Here we go.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, so, and there was one photo of this trap actually in the stream, and we've used these at some of the camps that we're in. One of the archaeologists that I worked with, Ryan Powell, he was stationed down the Deer Lodge Forest, BLM properties down there, and we ran a week-long youth camp with Shoshone high school kids and Salish Kootenai high school kids. So we kind of like, it was called bridging the divide between those tribes and bringing them together. And we would visit the archaeological sites around Dillon and around the southwestern part of Montana. And one time we had this fish trap down there in the stream, and it was career track exposure with these kids too, so we had some fisheries biologists there. And the stream wasn't too heavy with fish. And so we had set it up in the stream. It was about a small one, about like this, and then set up the rock dam next to it. And so during the day, we'd check the trap and see if there was any fish. There's no fish, no fish. And pretty soon the fisheries biologists, they said, oh, well, we'll help you guys out. So they went upstream, and then they had the shockers and stuff like that. And so they set it up. They got some fish in there, and then we brought the kids back over. Hey, we got some fish! Well, and then the funny thing too is that they wanted to show off to the kids a little bit too, and biologists can be kind of goofy guys too sometimes. So they go, okay, guys, come on over, watch this. We had this fish, and basically we were going to eat some of these fish too. The kids were. And so anyway, what they did with this one fish, they killed it and took the head off. And they said, okay, you guys watch this, watch this. They put the fish in the stream with the head off, electrocuted that water, and the fish started swimming upstream without a head. Oh my God. The kids go, oh wow, they were so excited. They thought that was the coolest thing. Jeez. But yeah, I have watched too that the fish, a lot of times when they're smarter than we think too. There's that barrier, the rock that they can't go around, or the willow fence line. And so a lot of times they'll just school up in front of the trap, and they'll be very wary about going in there. And so then what we had to do too one time is the fish kind of swimming around. We didn't have a whole lot. I think maybe about 10 of them were swimming around the front of it. And it wasn't during a spawning event, so the numbers were low. But we had them spawning around, and the youth, we said, okay, you guys go upstream and start walking down. And of course, the kids get really rowdy in water. They're splashing each other and creating a commotion. And then when one of the fish says, I'm going to take a chance, I'm going to go through that. Maybe I go through that hole in there. Then the other fish see that, and then they start darting through there. So that one fish went in there, and then the other fish followed suit. So then we got fish that way. But yeah, so that's pretty amazing device there. Yes?
Did you say you have to wait a while for the willows to dry?
Yeah, yes. About 3 months. Yeah. About 3 months, and if you look at a hardwood like this for a digging stick, if I was put this together when it was green, then my ties and binding would come loose too with it because it would shrink. But this is called ocean spray, and it is one of the densest hardy shrubwoods we have in Montana. And you can see the splitting back there. It's even hard to dry out without splitting because it's so dense that the outside dries before the inside, and that causes stress. And then it'll split, so you can see the little splits there. But ocean spray was used quite a bit for even snowshoes and such, and you could split these down really well and to create snowshoes and other device pack frames from that wood too. It's very good. But yeah, good question. Yeah, so the wood on here usually this takes almost a year to almost over a year to be able to dry properly. So you got to think in advance when I'm making some of these products. Yes?
How many fish might go in there at one time, and then how do you get them out?
Right, yeah, okay, good question. And I think I'd have to follow up with a question is how big the fish are that go in there. And so, as you can see, there is a hole in that cone there about that big. So fish could probably come back out, and that's okay. Maybe that size we don't want to harvest. We want to harvest a more efficient size, maybe this size or so. They're fitting in there. So maybe you could see 8 to 10 fish like this size maybe fit in there. And then how do you get the fish out? That's always a fun one to work with the kids on that. They go, oh, you reach your hand out right up in there. And I go, no, you don't want to do that. You'll get your hand stuck in there. Last time I went to the school, I had to cut the kid's arm off. No. And so a lot of it, they're like, well, how does that work? I mean, they could come right out of that hole. And that's what I say, well, that one, that's okay. We'll catch him next year when he's bigger and such. But essentially, the fish go in there. They're looking they come back to the backside and go, oh, I'm stuck. Now, if they're small enough, they can turn themselves around, and maybe they can come out this way. But what I've noticed, too, is that they come around and they're kind of tactile. They're bumping up against the ribs there, trying to find a way out. And pretty soon they find their nose is in between the cone and the ribs there, and they feel trapped. And a lot of times they'll just kind of sit there. Oh, I can't move. So yeah, so the question is then with the kids, it's kind of fun. Eventually they do figure it out, though, how to get the fish out is by untying this, and then the willows splay open, and you dump the fish out into Saint-Chale's pack. Okay, so yeah, it's fun. This is a fun device, fun to make, and Jen and I were just talking about on the way down here. I haven't taught the students how to make those yet, so that's one thing so we need to do a lot of prep, get our willow now, let it dry through at least 3 months. But during that time, I have them making the cordage, making this rope and string to tie that all up. How are we doing on time? Half hour?
So we're right at 12 o'clock.
Okay. Go ahead and advance another one there, Jan. We're going to some of the other fishing methods that are pretty interesting. Yeah, right here. Okay, so dip net. This is an interesting photo. I found this photo. I don't know exactly where I found it, but the caption was the Flathead River. And I don't know where part of the Flathead River where this came from, whether it's up by Kalispell or on the Flathead Reservation or what. But this is pretty interesting. I really will learn a lot from this. So dip netting, how do you just don't go into the stream and you start fishing for the fish, right? You have to direct the fish into a channel, and then there's a platform right there that the individual stands on, and then when the fish come through there, they dip, scoop them out with a net. And you can also use, at that time, you could also use a fish spear. I have yet to make a dip net, but I do have a frame. I do have the loop created, and I'm letting that dry for 3 months or more before I make my net, my dip net. But this also was another traditional fishing device, and it is the fish spear, or in archaeological, I think it was called the Lester spear, and three-prong spear. This is a lodgepole sapling there, and then I took a Rocky Mountain maple. You know when a deer or a elk feed on the tops of a shrub, it'll create a branch. And so then this is what I've got, a fork. So I look for those branching, fairly equal size fork in there. I cut that fork off. I carve a groove into that, set the fork into there. And then I have a tree pitch glue that I create with tree pitch and charcoal. And I set that in there, set the bone point in there, glue them in with the tree pitch glue. And then I have the cordage, the dog bane cordage here that I wrap it with to secure it, to tie it together. I can't use buckskin or rawhide on this because buckskin and rawhide, when it gets wet, its properties change and it gets sloppy, it gets unties and stuff like that too. So we need a vegetative cordage material for water applications for a fish trap that sits in the water for a long time. And then I've impregnated this with the sappy, sticky sap. So now it's even more waterproofed. It just gives it a little bit more structure and such, so it makes it secure. But yeah, so fish come through, we'll break some. I've done that before in schools, bam. And so then you thrust it over the back of the fish, and these spikes impale on the sides and in the back, and the fish can't get out. Now I have yet to fish with this, and then pulling the forks out to get the fish. This this artifact actually belongs to the Kootenai National Forest educational trunk. And so I do not want to use this. This is for their educational, heritage education program. But pretty effective there. These are deer bone spikes here too. A story of the use of this, coastal Séliš, where the salmon are bigger, so the fork would be bigger too. And there was a man that was being aggressive with this woman in a fishing village. He came at her. She grabbed this fishing spear, came back around and got him on the thigh, and she ran away. He was like, ah! Stuck with a fishing spear on his thigh. So anyway, one of those stories that I come upon in my research. Go ahead and advance that. Fishing pole. This is on the Flathead River. In the Montana Historical Society, I have a number of items, fishing items, and one is a fishing pole at the Historical Society. I don't have a photo of it. I couldn't find that. But it's essentially a very long pole with a line at the end at a certain depth, and just fairly simple with some bone hooks. Go ahead and advance that. Yeah, this is good. So this here, net fishing, is another discovery of mine through the archaeological record. On Flathead Lake, Finley Point State Park, when the wintertime, the lake goes down 10 feet, it exposes landforms and other cultural use areas that were there previous to the dam being built. I found this rock, this artifact, in the gravels, and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, oh, that's a grooved maul. Basically, they grooved it so they could put it on a handle and use it as a stone hammer. But when I looked at it closely, a stone hammer would have battering on both ends there, indicating it was used as a stone hammer. So I thought, no, that's not a stone hammer. What is that? It's broken half, too. That's part of it. And you can see this groove that was pecked in there with another rock to put a groove in there so they could tie that onto the bottom of a net. So it was a net weight. So it's pretty cool. To find that and confirm to me that our tribes were using nets on the Flathead Lake. That's pretty cool. And that landform had a curve to it too. So it kind of had a curve, and I think it collected fish in there, and it was perfect for the use of a net in that area. So I monitor that artifact every year. If the lake gets down low enough, then I go out there and I refine that artifact, take photos, and make sure it's still there. So that's kind of cool. Okay, next slide. Another method is these elevated rock weirs. This is not in Montana. This is up in the Yukon Delta or so. And as you can see, there's a pond right there that the fish come in. They lead them into this pond, eventually into another shallow pond, and then into this very shallow pond, maybe a few feet or a foot deep, and then they're spearing the fish with the fish spear there. And then this is just a drawing of that just simplifies that image a little bit better. And I'm thinking, now, did we do that? Do we have any evidence of that, of fishing with that method? Scroll on to the next one. So then here is Yellowstone Lake rock weirs. And that's part of our homelands, part of our area. I'm not sure, that's a viable fishing method that we probably practiced also in that realm. That's still, I've been to that site. That site's still there on the Yellowstone River, or lake, I'm sorry. One more. And this one, this is one of the coolest ways of fishing. Now, this is also up in the Yukon Delta area too, but look at this. Here she is, fish go up. There may be in a spawning event too, going up the small stream, feeder stream. Fish coming back down. She's got that fence. They can't go around the fence. They wiggle up that ramp. She just drops, picks up the fish and puts it in a basket and goes back to camp. And there's her camp right back there. So fish ramps like that, fish traps, they're set up in camps all the time and always tending to them. But I think that's we're going to set that up in one of our camps sometime and feed our camp participants that way. So yeah, fun stuff. That's it. Okay. So, Shehoy, that's it. Questions, comments? Sure enough.
How were the fish prepared and cooked?
Okay. Oh, I didn't. I should have brought some of those in there. Okay. So, especially during the spawning event, you're going to get more fish than you can handle, right? So you're going to eat some fresh, but then you're also going to have to preserve those fish for. And so that's the whole part of the strategy, especially with the bull trout in the fall. You're getting ready for winter. The cutthroat's going to supply you all through spring, summer, and fall, and then pretty soon the bull trout are spawning. Then you're going to incorporate that. Then all those bull trout are going to help you get through the winter time. So you need to preserve them. So there was drying racks, air dry, smoked, and drying too was part of that. And as a matter of fact, anybody know Smoke Elser? I'm sure you know Smoke Elser, yeah. Quite the legend in horse packing into the Bob Marshall. And another National Geographic moment for me is when we contracted with Smoke to take our elders into the Bob Marshall Wilderness. And we did that for 3-4 years in a row. And that was Ines Vandenberg, Francis Vandenberg, and Louis Adams that we horsepacked and recorded all their trails and stories and place names and camps. Well, Smoke said when he was younger, when he first started as a young man packing in the Bob Marshall, in the Danaher Basin, he said there was still some fish drying racks that were still there, that were kind of pretty old shape, but pretty decrepit shape. He said they're still there. So that's kind of cool. And then there's an old historic photo. I can't find it. I should find it again. But it was on Salmon Lake, Big Salmon Lake in the Bob Marshall Wilderness. And at the lake outlet, there was these series of willows across there. And I just in this old black and white photo was just a little bit down in the corner of the photo. I see that going across the outlet, the stream there. Go, what? That had to have been set up for a fish trap. I can't prove it, but I think my deduction of that observation of what they're doing most likely was a fish trap. And Big Salmon Lake in the Bob Marshall is a big spawning lake for cutthroat and bull trout in that area there. So that's pretty interesting. Yeah. Any questions for Jan too?
But either of you, are you familiar with the pictographs on the north end of Little Bull Island and Flathead Lake?
A little bit, yes.
Can you interpret those?
Probably can't. No, I can't remember what. Can you describe what figures there were on there, or?
There's not a lot of them,
Yeah.
but they're just kind of lines. But there looks like a sun.
Oh, yeah, circular, motifs of some sort. Yeah.
But I know nothing else about them.
Yeah, right there on Finley Point. I live on Finley Point, as a matter of fact. So Bull Island's.
It's on Little Bull.
Yeah, Little Bull. And then on Finley Point, there's a panel there too, and there's a deer figure and kind of a human figure there too, and maybe something similar with those other. They're pretty hard to interpret, even within our own tribal memories and consciousness. A lot of times the elders will say it's very specific to that person putting the design on there too. So, yeah. I think that's about all I can tell you with there. Yes, back there. I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to mention that there's a drying rack in the museum here on the left.
I did see that. That's cool. Yeah, a quad pod. Yeah, if you go out there. And I've made some of those too. And as a matter of fact, I owe one to the Swan Valley Museum. Just as this one, this goes to the Swan Valley Museum here too, is this one here. But yeah. And you had a question.
Yeah, could you teach us how to pronounce correctly for Jan? Thank you.
Oh, yeah. So up there on the screen, it's lamb. Yeah, lem. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, lem.
Yep. And then Lemlem's Pesia is thank you all for your wonderful reception and being here. Yes, Dale.
Once the fish were dried or smoked, how did they store them? Did they build satchels or something to hold them in?
Okay, the combination. There's okay. There was okay. So grinding stones were some of our grinding stones are interesting. Mortars and pestles. We find pestles, long pestles that are pretty long like this. Stones that are about this long. That created our ancestors created long ones like this. And I've been exploring that, how to make them lately. And but we never find the pestles, but not the mortars. What were the mortars? What were the mortars? Why are we not? We're just finding the long rocks, the pestles. As I was looking at an old photo of the Columbia River woman, she had a long pestle and a wood mortar. It was out of a log, a section of a log, and it was hollowed out. And so that's why the pestle has to be so long, is because it was usually about this wide and about that deep. And so we didn't have corn. We weren't grinding corn. What we were doing is grinding meat. So you know how jerky and dry meat is when you put it in a pack. You know, it's got all these different. Well, the elders said let's pound that into a smaller, more compact. Let's pack it into a storage. Like sometime a rawhide cylinder was used to store meat, and when you pack it in deep, you're pushing out some of the oxygen so the bacteria won't grow. Plus it's smoked, that kills bacteria. It's dry, doesn't have any moisture in it. But in order to move that around, you don't want just a big bulky thing of dry meat. You want to pack it up and use it that way. Plus the elders said, well, if you've got babies, young kids without teeth, you need to grind up that dry meat. If you got old people without teeth, you need to grind up that. So grinding surfaces like that was pretty important for that. Also for grinding berries. There was actually berry pounders to grind them up, and then the berries would be made into these small cakes and then dried that way, and then they would store them away. Gosh, did I answer your question, or am I going in a different direction?
About parfleche also.
Oh, okay, yeah. So rawhide parfleshes were used quite a bit to store food and such. Another cooking method, which I love, I have a great time doing it, is taking a fillet of fish and creating a willow kind of work to put the fillet in, and then cook it next to the fire. I've had a lot of experience with the Pacific Northwest. I backpacked down the coast, Washington coast, quite extensively, and was experiencing a lot of the archaeological petroglyphs that were there that the coastal people created. And so we'd go over there and we'd camp on the beach, and there was La Push is the Quileute Reservation, and we'd rent cabins and then go down the beach and have these cookouts. And then I'd go into the small town of La Push and buy some salmon from the locals. And we had these huge salmon. I had about 4 of them. So I had these huge fillets about this big. So I had to create these huge drying devices that we put up on the fire next to the beach there. And we had probably about 8 to 10 friends and family that were there. And we let it cook for about 4 or 5 hours. And it's just beautiful, just nice salmon. And we brought that, paraded it through the beach and to the cabins, and everybody goes, where's the party? Where's the party? Wow. So we fed a lot of people too with that salmon. That's a lot of fun. Now, we do a little bit of that in our camps. We have 2 or 3 camps scheduled this summer, and some of the things that we do, of course, is all traditional activities, and cooking is one of them. So we'll cook it that way. I've cooked salmon, fish on a slab of rock over a fire, things like that too. Yeah.
I noticed that it seems like a lot of these fishing methods seem to harvest a lot of fish at one time, and she was wondering if there was a cultural designation for fishing like there is for gathering the bitterroot.
Yes. Always giving thanks, honoring. I don't know. Do you want to take that?
Well, one of the traditional values that we have as Native people is only take what you need. Don't over-harvest. There's no reason to have more than you need. Because as Tim talked about, we would go to different places, there was always fish. So if, say, we're all, as a group, we're going to travel somewhere, we only need so much fish to get us to the next spot. So we don't try not to overharvest, so only take in what you need. That's a travel value that we have, and we still, a lot of us still follow it. I teach my son, he's 12 now. If you hunt it, you better eat it. So if you're not gonna eat it, don't hunt it.
Yeah.
And that's teaching our kids the traditional values.
Acknowledgement, honoring of the fish, and giving back. Many times I tell the student, when you talk to the fish or the plant that you're taking from, talk about giving back. And part of giving back is to be an advocate for that resource, right? Fighting for the habitat for fish, animals, fighting for diversity in our ecosystems and proper functioning ecosystems, because the more diversity we have, the more of these cultural plants and animals are out there, the higher potential for our cultural perpetuation. And so then we rely on these land managers to support our treaty rights for hunting and gathering off the reservation. And so joint management is a thought, a subject. Right now, the Treaty Rights Land program, which the BLM is a part of, they're bringing camas and bitterroot back into these landscapes, which is great because that helps us, supports our treaty rights, and is also part of supporting our perpetuation of our culture. So that's, pretty important, is making relationships with federal, state agencies, even private landowners that are offering for us to come on their land and to collect and harvest, which is great. Because that interaction with that plant is very important. It's more important than we think. Instead of the wilderness ethic, leave no land trammeled by man, well, that ignores our existence and use and manipulation of the land of plants, animals, minerals, humans, and stuff like that too. So, one story that's associated to that is the digging stick and the bitterroot. I know I'm kind of going over time a little bit, but so we're out with Felicity McDonald, and we're on the west side of the reservation, Hot Springs, Camas area, where most of our bitterroot is. Well, all of our bitterroot is kind of on the reservation is there. And there's a cultural bioindicator for when the bitterroot is ready to be dug. And next to my home, I have a serviceberry plant, shrub, and when it flowers, the white blooms on it, I go, okay, the bitterroot is ready to be dug over in Hot Springs and Camas Prairie. I don't even have to go there to check on it. I just know it because we've associated that serviceberry bloom to when the bitterroot is ready to be dug other places, not even next to my home. So that's pretty cool. It's using nature to do that. Instead of putting on a calendar, we're going to dig bitterroot at this time, it doesn't work that way. Right, Jan? I mean, sometimes, we got a schedule. Sometimes it comes out, we don't have no indication. Pretty soon it's out there. And pretty soon we got to say, okay, class, we can't have our regular classroom. We got to get out there and start digging the bitterroot because it's up. So Felicity, we were traveling, and at this time the blooms were up, the bitterroot blooms, and we were looking at them so we can kind of have a visual of what it looks like. And we come into this area, it's probably about half as this room, and she says, oh, let's look at this bitterroot over here. So we go over and we're looking at it, and I'm going, wow, there's not very much here. It's pretty sparse. And it doesn't seem that robust. And she says, oh, these bitterroot, these speculums, they're pitiful. She says, we got to come and work with this bitterroot. And I'm not going, wow. I said, Felicity, but if we do, we're going to be taking quite a bit out of there. I don't know, it's going to be a big impact to this little community of bitterroot. She goes, oh, no. She said, first off, we have this relationship with bitterroot. It's one of our first roots that comes back. We have a ceremony. We welcome each other back. We're friends. We're family. It's deep that way. It's that relationship. We support each other with that relationship. And I go, wow, okay. And then she said, and this is the way we harvest too. She said, this will go away if we don't pay attention to it, if we don't work with this bitterroot. It'll go away. So we need to work with it. And she says, you see those 4 bitterroot right there? Excuse me. Says you dig that biggest one there, the most mature, that opens up minerals and water to go to the other 3 Bitterroot, and they'll benefit from that disturbance. And I'm going, oh, wow. And the hair on my arms go up. And I go, that is the true essence of ethnobotany right there, was that in a relationship with that plant. And that relationship with that plant made it more viable and more robust and stuff. So I was like, wow, that's amazing.
All right, everybody, we're gonna bring this to an end. So, big round of applause.
Round of Jen, come on. Thank you. I'd like to say just a little word from Séliš for our goodbye.
I hope you guys have a safe trip home. Thank you for listening to us.
Yeah, thank you. We'll be around for a little while if you have some more questions or something.
And real quick, everybody, we have a couple of announcements for future winter storytellings. So on March 7th, Dan Hall is unable to join us that day, but we are lucky to have Kevin and Brian to step in. Kevin will put Travelers Rest and the expedition into geographic and cultural context using Indigenous maps, linguistics, and archaeological evidence. And then also, everybody, please mark your calendars for Tuesday, March 31st. We will be hosting an anniversary open house to celebrate 25 years of Travelers Rest State Park. So make sure to watch your email and your mail for formal invitations. But thank you, everybody.